All right, booms. All right, so let's take a boat ride down to Ireland. Men were wearing heels and lipstick. Pistol duels could whip out. And if you ride that boat long enough, you'll run into my buddy named Barry Lyndon. Or at least that was the name that he stole. So we're going to start off on a title card. Part 1. By what means Redmond Barry acquired the style and title of Barry Lyndon. So the first image we see is very picturesque. We have two men facing each other in the middle of a pistol duel. Now 3 other witnesses are in between them because, well, you have to have an audience when you kill somebody. The duel ends with Barry's father getting shot over the purchases of some horses. Next scene, we have our man, Redmond Barry, with his cousin, engaging in some poker play. And remember, this is way back in the day, so you know how the Irish get with the whole inbreeding and whatnot. So pretty much Barry wants to bang his cousin, Nora. In order to tease Barry and his boner, Nora puts a ribbon inside her breastises. And all Nora wants Barry to do is find the ribbon inside her breastises. But Barry is a boy at this point. He's a little meek, he's a little shy, and he doesn't have the courage to grab them titties by the yonkers, pretty much. After a military public practice, we got Nora over here, being the hoe that she is. She dancing around with Captain John Quinn. Captain John Quinn has stole Redmond Barry's girl, or at least his cousin, which is a little gross. Barry takes her over to the forest to discuss matters of the heart. Barry is jealous over the affection that Nora gives other men. And although Barry himself wants to also be a part of the military, he is envious of Captain John Quinn and jealous that he's taken his girl. Nora makes up her mind and tells Barry that she wants to be with Captain John Quinn. Barry finds Nora and Captain John Quinn outside of a beautiful palace being chaperoned by her brothers, Mick and Eunuch. Nora goes with Captain John Quinn. That means there's more money in the family's pockets. But Barry, since he's a selfish little brat, he doesn't give a damn. Captain John Quinn isn't really a man who likes to be trifled with. So with dismay, he realizes that Nora and her cousin has been banging, or at least has been trying to bang for the longest while. He's not too pleased about it. He throws his ribbon on the ground and makes himself a departure. Mick walks over to Barry and lets him know that he is a dumbass and that he's ruining the chances of the family acquiring fortune. A couple of hours later, things have settled down and we have Captain John Quinn still in the company of not only Nora but also her family. It seems like Captain John Quinn is actually going to propose to Nora. He asks Captain John Quinn to stand up and proclaim his love by giving a kiss to Nora on the cheek, which pisses the hell out of Barry. And with his simp ass, he stands up and throws a glass of wine in Captain John Quinn's face. Because real men throw wine in the faces of other men. Quinn, who's made to look like the villain for some reason, is obviously pissed. Captain John Quinn demands that Barry should be horsewhipped. Then Barry says, man, screw all that. If you want to pick up the gun, let's pick up the gun and go outside and let's shoot. After that confrontation, down a long road, Captain Grogan is trying to talk some sense into Redmond Barry. Ultimately, Barry is in love with Nora Brady. So much so that he asks Captain Grogan to arrange a pistol duel match with none other than Captain John Quinn. The next scene being the pistol duel match. The pistols are being loaded by Mick, Eulich, and Captain Grogan is also there as third party to make sure things go around square. In order to smooth things over, Captain Grogan tries to persuade Barry by giving him 10 guineas, which originally I thought were guinea pigs, but now I think they're like gold or something, and to forget the whole silly match as long as Barry takes the money and leaves for Dublin, which Captain John Quinn, who looks like he's about to shit his pants at the moment, more excited than ever. Barry realizes that one of those pistols are not his. Pistols are raised, Barry is fierce, ready to shoot and fire. The pistols are fired, Captain John Quinn falling on his back. The brothers, Captain Grogan and Barry, all rush over to the corpse. Brothers, in a state of shock, asks Barry to leave before the police come looking. Mick takes Barry and they both head back home to Barry's mother. And after the beans of Barry's recent murder was spilled, Mick tries to convince Barry's mother that it's time for Barry to leave and head to Dublin before the bailiffs show up and haul his ass to jail. Some hours later, Barry, being on the run, ends up on the countryside, thirsty. However, we see 2 suspiciously looking men staring at Barry on top of his horse. A few words are exchanged. Barry takes off, continuing down the path. Sometime later, in a forest, Barry, traveling down it on his horse, runs into the back of a man he recognizes. The man turns around, wielding 2 pistols pointed at Barry. A few moments later, the second man from the inn blocks Barry's rear, pause, Barry, looking for some type of sympathy out of the two thieves, announces to them that he's also on the run. While they are impressed by Barry's story, they are not as willing to let him leave with some of his belongings. And it isn't until Barry wanders into the next nearby village that he finds himself mesmerized by a recruiting officer looking to take on anyone into the service. Being a broke fool that Barry is, tempts the hell out of him, and he enlists. But Barry's first days being a grunt with isn't going so smoothly. I mean, just the man asking to receive a cup of water without grease in it gets him laughed at by the whole regiment. One of the troublemakers, besides Barry's feet, suggests that he says a couple of pecking words to poke fun at the big fool. Barry says the words that the troublemaker whispers to him, which leads the whole regiment to erupt in laughter. Barry's a dirty-ass fighter because the first thing he picked up was a knife. The other dude picked up a chair. You can't bring a knife to a chair fight. And this seeming like it'll be fun to watch, the regiment officer decides, hey man, let's start a fight club in the middle of the 7 Years' War. Not too long into it, punches are thrown, faces are bashed, blood is gashed, and your boy Redmond Barry is beating this big ginger's ass. Barry's lifted up by the regiment on their shoulders, congratulated. Some weeks pass on, and Barry, still being in the regiment, ends up running into Captain Grogan on horseback as he's passing him along on the lineup. Later that night, Captain Grogan and Barry decide to have a private conversation in his tent. Next thing Barry wonders about is whatever happened to Nora, the woman that he killed a man over for. And in this candlelit conversation, Captain Grogan lets Barry know that it was all a ruse to get Barry out of the way, so that the pimping of Nora to Captain John Quinn could still happen, and that the family fortune could still stay intact. This pisses Barry the hell off to know that he was lied and betrayed. But he wonders how is that possible if he still shot the man. Captain Grogan lets Barry know that Captain John Quinn wasn't shot by a bullet. He was shot by tow, which I guess is like an 18th century paintball or something, because he looked dead to me. Time goes on. A couple of weeks later, Barry finds himself in the middle of his first skirmish. Military skirmishes back then consisted of, hey man, I'm going to pick up this rifle, walk into that line of fire, and hope I don't get shot. While the rest of the British military advances toward their enemies, Barry stays behind with Captain Grogan, picks him up to run into the forest. And in the forest, Captain Grogan says his last dying words to Barry, which is followed by a non-gay kiss scene. This breaks Barry's heart, knowing that he's lost his only friend left in the world. And as Barry continues his military service, he further realizes that he's really not cut for this shit. While wandering away from his regiment into the forest looking for a water source, Barry finds himself a lake with 2 horses and 2 men holding each other inside of a lake. While eavesdropping on their intimate conversation, Barry overhears how one of these officers will leave the regiment to go toward their Prussian allies, and Barry realizes that this is his one and only opportunity of getting out of the military service. And boom! With new papers and a horse, just like that, Barry's strolling out of that military campment like he's a straight up PIMP. Barry runs into a beautiful young maiden on the skirts of a countryside lake. Barry asks the young woman if he can give her any water or food, and for a finely dressed officer, she accepts and takes him back to her house. In this candlelit scene, we see that this woman isn't just alone, but is also with baby. So she's a single mother. What a surprise. Barry asks the woman where the father is. The father, her husband, hasn't been around in such a long time. He's also currently serving in the Prussian military. Barry, being a sly, devious young man that he is, uses the opportunity to see if he can finagle himself between her panty drawers. Next morning, they find themselves back on the outskirts of that same lake, ready to leave. So after getting his whistle wet, Barry continues down the road along his journey for several miles out until he finds himself standing in front of a group of Prussian soldiers, one of them being Captain Pottsdorf. Now on this stop, Captain Pottsdorf asks Barry which direction is he going to. Barry tells Captain Pottsdorf that he's on his way to Bremen, but Captain Pottsdorf points out that he's severely in the wrong direction. But Captain Pottsdorf, being suspicious, asks to see Barry's papers to prove his identity. He asks Barry if he'd like to accompany him. Barry happily accepts, and they both take off riding in the opposite direction. Back at the Prussian camp, Barry and Captain Pottsdorf get cozy while drinking together. And while Barry is entertaining Captain Pottsdorf with a tale of many stories that he's never experienced, Captain Pottsdorf skillfully asks him couple of questions too, since he doesn't believe that he's this Lieutenant Vignum. What ends Captain Pottsdorf's investigation is Barry slipping up on one of his questions, which allows Captain Pottsdorf to realize Barry isn't the man who he says he is. And after realizing this, Barry is arrested and thrown into the Prussian army. How ironic. Months later, toward the end of the 7 Years' War, Captain Pottsdorf's regiment encounter a battle and also causes the incapacitation of Captain Pottsdorf, whom has to be saved by Barry once he wanders into the room that was torpedoed by a cannonball. After saving Captain Pottsdorf's life, Barry finds himself being honored by the top head honcho of the Prussian army. Weeks later, Captain Pottsdorf takes Barry under his wing as his spy. Captain Pottsdorf introduces Barry to his fat uncle, a fat uncle who is the Herr Minister. The Minister of Police has a problem which Barry can solve: to simply spy on the Chevalier de Ballou de Barry, who their country is very suspicious of. Now, the Chevalier de Ballou de Barry is a gambler, an Irish gambler. But like 2 minutes in, Barry messes things up like usual and telling Chevalier de Ballou Barry, that name is hard as hell to say. Anyways, tells him that he is not even British, that he's Irish just like him, and he's been a spy for Captain Pottsdorf. Barry breaks down into tears, and then Chevalier consoles him. Under his company, Barry soon becomes his protege as to being a gambler. Instead of being a fair gambler, the Chevalier teaches Barry on how to cheat. And cheating is something where Barry's more than happy to oblige to. Through a system of tricks and schemes, the Chevalier and Barry both rake in certainly a lot of guineas together over a short period of time. But the problem is they tried that shit with the wrong motherfucker. Now, the Prince of Turbingham is clever enough to realize when he's being cheated. So the Prince of Turbingham stands up like a real G and says, "Ayo, straight up, I do not have the money, and I am not paying for this shit." But by telling the Minister of Police and Captain Pottsdorf that the Chevalier wants to demand satisfaction, it sends their alerts on high. Now they're seeking to deport the Chevalier. So the next morning, whom we assume is the Chevalier is actually Barry in disguise as the Chevalier. And to meet Barry at Chevalier's carriage are two officers ready to arrest the man they assume is the Chevalier. So while deporting Barry, the next few nights later, over at a palace looking to scheme and trick a couple more of high-class targets. So some months later, during the travels of the Chevalier and Barry first sets his eyes upon the Lyndon family. Lady Lyndon, Sir Charles Reginald Lyndon, Reverend Runt, and Lord Bullington. Later that night, Lady Lyndon, alongside Reverend Runt, play poker at the table run by the Chevalier and Barry. Pierces his eyes into the soul of Lady Lyndon, who could not help but stare back at him, both enamored by each other. Lady Lyndon excuses herself from the table, as to which later Barry's stalker ass follows her outside and attempts to seduce her. Lady Lyndon, still married to Reginald, mind you, falls in love with Barry, and the two are dating out in public, like some hoe shit. Later, in some palace, of which I don't know who owns it, Barry approaches Sir Reginald Lyndon playing poker with his buddies at a table. While Barry is polite to the table of men, Sir Reginald Lyndon isn't as polite back to him. Accuses Barry of seducing his wife and having an affair, and as Barry walks away, Sir Lyndon experiences a heart arrhythmia, or a heart attack, or I don't know what the hell happened to him, but this motherfucker looks like he's about to pass out dead. And boom, we've hit intermission. Excuse me while I go take a piss break. Alright, we are back. So we have finally hit part 2, containing an account of the misfortunes and disasters which befell Barry Lyndon. Alright, so a year later, after the death of Sir Reginald Lyndon, Barry and Lady Lyndon both decide to get married and acquire Lady Lyndon's title and name. So instead of being referred to as now Redmond Barry, Barry is now Barry Lyndon. Over the course of the next year, Lady Lyndon and Barry both decide to have a child together, a baby named Brian. Money, a good-looking wife, 2 kids, a home over his head, and food in his stomach. Barry's still out there in the streets. City boy! City boy! Good for him, but not so good for Lady Lyndon, who's stuck at home. Unfortunately, this begins the downfall of her character and her mental state into a sadness. A couple of days later, while out on a trail, We have Lord Bullington walking alongside his mother, and I'm pretty sure he's taking alongside this trail on purpose. Like, he wants to show her something. We see our man Barry having an affair with a woman, with a baby. It looks like it could be their kid. Perhaps, maybe Barry could have a second family in hiding. And when Lady Lyndon sees this is the last string that is pulled, and now she is officially heartbroken. The next day, we have Lord Bullington, Lady Lyndon, and Brian all stroll into the room. Into Barry's office, we can see as Barry is shopping from home. Before they leave, Barry kisses Lady Lyndon and Brian, and also kisses Lord Bullington. However, Lord Bullington doesn't kiss him back, which Barry and everybody else back in those days viewed that as disrespectful. So Barry takes Lord Bullington into the next room. He got his ass spanked! Years later, Barry and Lady Lyndon get older, while Lord Bullington matures into a young man. And since Brian is Barry's only son, Barry makes sure to spend endless amounts of money upon Brian in his early years. Days later, Barry is confronted by his mother as to what he will do as far as the family fortune. And this idea permeates inside Barry's mind, to which now he seeks to acclaim a permanent lordship title within the Lyndon family. As time went on in the failing marriage, Lady Lyndon begins to see how much Barry is a leech as far as her family fortune, draining every single penny and guinea and whatever the hell they call money back then down to the drain. In the study chamber of the palace of the Lyndons, we have Brian and we also have Lord Bullington studying for school. Lord Bullington deep in the studies, however, we have Brian who's acting like a child. But Lord Bullington, because of the resent he holds towards Barry, and at the worst possible moment when he's giving Brian a spanking, here comes Barry Lyndon to catch it all. And just like how when Lord Bullington was younger, here's Barry beating his ass again, even as a young man. Man, this family's more dysfunctional than mine. After getting his ass beat red, Lord Bullington threatens to kill Barry should be the next time he ever puts his hands on him. Next scene, Lady Lyndon, along with Redmond and a group of musicians, play for the high-class society. And then suddenly, to disrupt the music, here comes Lord Bullington along with Brian, leading Brian in his shoes, clunking and clanking, attracting all the attention. Lord Bullington uses the opportunity to publicly disgrace Barry, which only infuriates Barry. After making his mother cry, Barry simply just can't hold it anymore. He can't hold back. He unleashes all furious hell, beats down Lord Bullington. Barry acts like a complete wild madman, scaring everybody and puts him in the eyes of disgrace toward those who seek to help him attain lordship. But even as the turmoil of their family and financial status happens in the background, this only attracts Barry more so to his son to develop a closer bond. Brian asks Barry if he could receive a horse for his birthday. This is a request, of course, too great to deny a father for his son. Barry goes out to purchase this said horse and leaves it in storage. The next morning, Reverend Runt alerts Barry that Brian took off to go and see the horse. As soon as he hears this, Barry stops what he's doing and leaves to go and find Brian. By the time he reaches Brian, it's too late. Brian has fell on his head and cannot move his body. Brian's funeral. Brian is in a carriage similar to the birthday carriage that he received years ago. And for obvious reasons, neither Barry or Lady Lyndon is able to carry on after Brian's death. After Reverend Runt's departure, this only caused Lady Lyndon to sink even further into a depression, so much so that she attempts suicide by swallowing poison. However, she only swallowed a small amount, which caused her to be violently ill. So much so that the accountant rushes into the room and catches her. This tragic scene only prompts him to travel toward the estate of Lord Bullington. And it's because the bringing of this sad news which prompts Lord Bullington to go out and seek satisfaction from Barry Lyndon. Sometime later, Lord Bullington then travels to a house where he finds Barry drunk as a skunk, passed out, and then he wakes him up and challenges him to a duel. And then boom! Lord Bullington fires his shot, and then shoots your boy Barry Lyndon down to the ground. And Barry Lyndon is alive at this point, is crying. And crying, he yelling, you know that he hurt. The next scene in the nearby inn, we have Barry seeing a doctor about the bullet that shot Barry's leg during the pistol duel. And because Lord Bullington's bullet shattered Barry's bones in his legs, unfortunately back in those days meant you couldn't save the leg. So the leg has got to go. And to deliver the final blow, Lord Bullington's accountant visits the Barrys to let them know that they are no longer a part of the family. Not only that they're demanding them leave. So if they should do so, that there'll be a pittance of 500 shillings a year given to Barrys in order to keep quiet about the whole mess. Lord Bullington could look into his mother's eyes and see how she's thinking and reflecting back on the times that she may have spent with Barry. Lord Bullington then slides another bill to her so that she can get back to what's important and stop thinking about the past. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. It's been another episode by Free Range Films and TV. Please click that like bell, click that subscribe bell. Be back for more. I will be delivering more. There's a long process. Believe me, it took me way longer than 3 hours to watch this damn film. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you around next time. All right, peace.